still lies ahead. In conversation with Laurie Siegel, please give a huge WebSummit welcome to Margrethe Vestager.
The real guarantee of an innovative future comes from keeping markets open so that anyone, big, small, can compete to produce the very best ideas.
Because obviously this is the global matter.
This is not about Apple, this is not about Android, this is about Google behavior.
For everyone to participate in paying their fair share, not more, not less.
A behavior that's illegal for a dominant company who will keep focusing, keep analyzing, keeping an eye so that technology will serve us and not serve itself.
Super exciting to be here with you. What an extraordinary time to have the role that you have. I was doing some research and someone said she will have more leverage than anyone else in the world. She will be the most powerful regulator of big tech on the planet. And I know you've expanded your role now. How are you feeling about it? Let's do the emotions first. Like, how does this feel?
Well, I would have felt alone if it wasn't for this. Because, they say that it takes a village to raise a child. I think that it takes a community like this actually to make tech serve humans, because this is what we're going to do.
Well, it's certainly at a time when I feel like technology and humanity is clashing in a very interesting way. What would you say in this new role, or the expanded role, is your most important priority?
Well, the first priority will always be humans. That technology should serve us, and that we need humans to understand what is going on, to create what is going on, and to do that as a community. The challenges that we have to make the tech community in itself, the user community, much more diverse, and also to reflect the world that we want to live in. Because if you look at the data we have, but also the data that we are missing, to make that available, to have the necessary skills and sufficient investment. But the bottom line of all of this is that we may have new technology, but we do not have new values. Dignity, integrity, humanity, equality, that's the same.
You've been known to take on the big tech companies. Patty was just talking about some of those, Apple, Amazon, Google. Do you think, have you witnessed them change? Do you think they're actually changing their behavior? And if not, what will? Will it be more fines? Or do you think, back in the US, you have presidential candidates talking about breaking them up. What do you think will actually make them change?
Well, first of all, they're different. They're different in their approach. They're different in their approach to law enforcement. They're also different when they partner up, because we do that as well. For instance, when it comes to fighting illegal content. But if I've seen change, it is basically to have even bigger ambitions. If you look at new Google services being launched, if you look at the Facebook Libra plans, if you look at the Apple streaming services, you see still bigger ambitions. And this also shows me that we have reached a phase where competition law enforcement can only do part of the job. We need to find the right level of democracy, framing tech, and say, this is how you should serve us.
Let's talk about Facebook, right? A lot of controversy over their cryptocurrency, a lot of controversy over Libra. Should it be allowed to proceed, given Facebook's history and handling privacy?
Well, first and foremost, we're trying to figure out what it is. And we can do that We can look at it even though it doesn't really exist yet. But this is not just for me as Commissioner for Competition. This is for the entire Commission. Because we have questions not only about tying of the Facebook product and the payment product and the dominance of Facebook, but colleagues of mine, they are asking questions about money laundering, terrorist financing, financial stability, you know, all the things that may come when you create a currency that is not under the control of authority.
I mean, you go to Silicon Valley, and I've been covering tech for a very long time. You go to Silicon Valley, you are actually feared in Silicon Valley. I mean, there's a total filter bubble in tech sometimes where you hear the US government say a lot of things. You hear the FTC put these fines out there, the DOJ, but I think there's really a fear that you'll come in and make real changes. Do you think that US regulators are afraid to really punish technology companies? I mean, there's a really interesting contrast between Europe and America.
That may have been, but what I sense is a very renewed, not only interest, but also engagement by US authorities to start asking questions, to start engaging, to start investigating. To say, well, maybe there's an enforcer role for us here as well. And that is very, very welcome.
You know, there's this ongoing debate at Facebook, going back to Facebook, about political ads. I'm sure you guys are speaking a lot about this. Twitter has drawn a hard line on making the decision to ban them. Jack Dorsey has said he won't allow political ads on the platform. Mark Zuckerberg says despite the fact that they could be spreading lies, that it shouldn't be up to the tech companies to judge what's true. Essentially, it's not their responsibility. I know you guys are thinking, you're thinking a lot about this type of thing. Who do you think is right?
Well, I think we have discussed in depth, at length, in the real world, what we want to accept and what we will not accept. I simply do not understand why that is not the same thing in the digital world. Because this is something that we have discussed. And there's been back and forth, and it has taken us ages. And we say, well, this is the framework for political advertising. This is the framework for our democratic debate. Why that should be any different in a digital world, I don't understand. And the second thing is that maybe we should do even more. Because the risk is that we completely undermine our democracy. Democracy is supposed to take place in the open, where a political ad can be fact-checked, contradicted, different opinions can be offered, it can be supported. But if it's only in your feed, it's only between you and Facebook, and then micro-targeting of who you are, that's not democracy anymore. That is just privatized de facto manipulation of who you're going to vote for. And democracy is supposed to take place in the open.
So since people listen to you in Silicon Valley, what would be your message to Mark Zuckerberg?
Well, I of course listen very, very closely when Mark Zuckerberg gives evidence in hearings in the US Democracy Senate or Congress committees. What is inspiring is not just what you say, it's also what you do. He's an amazing creator of an amazing company, and if he himself put action behind his words, we would see change rapidly, and that would be very welcome.
Well, what kind of action?
Well, you see other companies, they say, as you mentioned Twitter, we will not have political advertising. That, of course, is not the end of that story, because you may still have bots and troll farms and all of that. But it's an important step forward where the company shows, well, these are our values. This is what we believe in. We are not just a neutral sort of stream of whatever comes here. We have values here. And I'm not the CEO of Facebook, I'm not to judge, but I think the time has come where they should also put action behind their words.
Part of your new role will be setting the agenda for regulations regarding artificial intelligence, and we are most certainly heading towards a future where biased AI could certainly have detrimental implications for humanity. How will you see your role to regulate that? What kind of regulations do you see putting into place around that?
Well, it's very tricky. So the first thing that we'll do is, of course, to listen very, very carefully to stakeholders everywhere. But we'll also try to listen fast, because as we're speaking, AI is developing, and that is wonderful. Because I see no limits as to how artificial intelligence can support what we want to do as humans. Take climate change. I think we can be much more effective in fighting climate change if we use artificial intelligence. I think we can spare people for, awful, stressful waiting time between having been examined by a doctor and having the result of that examination, and maybe also more precise results in doing that. So I think the benefits of using artificial intelligence, they are with no limits. But we need to get in control of sort of the cornerstones so that we can trust it, that it has human oversight, and very importantly, that it doesn't have bias. Because if we accept bias, then we basically just take the world we have right now and we set it in stone.
I was recently speaking to someone who runs the Center for Humane Technology, and he was talking about the AI recommendation models that are being built by Google and Facebook and Twitter, and he was saying, Lori, these companies know more about us than our doctors and our lawyers, our priest confessionals combined. And he says, which means he thinks they should be treated as fiduciary. They should, if they're not acting in our best interest, then we should have class action lawsuits. And that's the way we should start protecting ourselves in the future. So is that something you think about? Are you considering any types of laws or regulations that would make platforms more accountable for what's on their platform?
This is part of my mission letter. The President-elect has asked me to take charge of exactly this discussion and figure out if we will push for new legislation to make people more responsible. But there are more ways to deal with what you're referring to, because one thing is that we have, you could call it sort of digital citizens' rights, the GDPR, but that doesn't solve the question of how much data can be collected about you. And we also need better protection and better tools to protect ourselves from leaving a trace everywhere we go. Because otherwise, I don't think that we're ready to be, naked, without a gadget, without our phones, without the things that we like. But maybe we would like to be much more able to choose what kind of trace we would leave behind. And that side of the equation will have to be part of the discussion as well. How can we be better protected from leaving that trace of data that allows companies to know so much more about any one of us that we might even realize ourselves.
So how can we? What does that actually look like? I think a lot of people are frustrated at this point. I remember interviewing Zuckerberg during Cambridge Analytica, and it was unbelievable how little we knew about what was happening. So, you in this seat, what does that look like?
First of all, I myself am very happy that I have digital rights. My problem is that I find it very difficult to enforce them. The only real result of me reading terms and conditions is that I get myself distracted from wanting to read the article that wanted me to tap terms and conditions. So we need that to be understandable so they know what we're dealing with. And we need software and services that will enable us not to leave the same kind of trace as we would otherwise do. But, you know, I'm a kind of a liberal. I really hope that the market will also help us here, because it's not just for politicians to deal with this. It is in an interaction with the market that we can find solutions. Because one of the main challenges in dealing with AI is, of course, that there is a risk that we will regulate for yesterday, and then it's worth nothing.
At what point do you think the big tech companies should be broken up? I know you said that this is the last thing in the toolbox, or this isn't what you're thinking of first, but at what point would you advocate for companies like Facebook, Google to be broken up?
Like, two different perspectives. First, from a competition point of view, you would have to do something where breaking up the company was the only solution to the illegal behavior, to the damage that you have provoked. And we don't have that kind of case right now. I will never exclude that that could happen, but so far we don't have a problem that big that breaking up a company would be the solution. Second perspective is, of course, sort of the size in itself. But the problem in that debate is that the people advocating it don't have a model as to how to do this. And if you know this story about an antique kind of creature, when you chopped out one head, I think 1, 2, or 7 came up. So there is a risk that you do not solve the problem. You just have many more problems. And you don't have a way of at least trying to control it. So I'm much more sort of in the line of thinking that you should say that when you become that big, you get a special responsibility, because you are de facto the rule setter in the market that you own. And we could be much more precise about what that then entails, because otherwise there's a risk that the many, many, many interesting companies, they have no chance of competing.
You were recently talking about your plans to act against companies dodging tax obligations in countries where their users live, and they have lots of user data, but they don't exactly make it clear how that data is monetized. And you said something that I thought was really interesting. You said, one of the things I've learned is that it is not you searching Google, it is Google searching you. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's if there is an imbalance between what you get and what you pay, then very often you're the product. It is you who are being searched, because all the data that you leave behind, they make you part of the product. So whenever you make a small query, well, that query is not just a window into the internet, it's also a window into you. And part of the amazing technology that they hold is the technology to not only predict what you want, but also to nudge you into making choices that you may otherwise not have made. And one of the reasons why I really love a good magic show is that this is labeled, you're going to be manipulated, because this is a trick. There is a card somewhere in the sleeve, there is something happening, and you find that it is fun and you are amazed. And if that was the case all the time, then this is a prediction. We take all the data, all the knowledge we have about you, then you would have a different relationship. But here, at least for me, I still have this sense of, this is the right answer. This is the truth I am presented with, and not a prediction about what I want to do next.
What do you think, as we head into 2020, what do you think is the biggest threat facing technology?
If technology gets self-consumed and not open to the many, many, many people who have great ideas. In Europe, over the last 10 years, has developed a vibrant, dynamic startup community with a lot of also scale-up potential. You see small startup, you see the giant businesses, you see how there is an appetite to use digital technologies for all kinds of different things. If tech sort of gets something that is only embedded in giant companies, that is beyond our democracies, then I think we lose trust in technology. And part of my mission is that we build trust in technology by making sure that we can reach for the potential, but we can also do something to control the dark sides.
Do you think that's where we're headed?
Well, I will do my best, but with great teams and a lot of determination, I think that our democracies can find that kind of solutions, yes.
I have to ask this, because, I mean, he talks about a lot of people, but spoke about you recently. President Donald Trump accused you of being the person who hates the United States more than anyone I have met. So I just want to give you the opportunity really quick. Your response to the President of the United States.
Well, then he can only meet people that really love the U.S.
So going off of that, we have Donald Trump saying you hate the U.S. You've got Tim Cook saying the judgment against Apple was total political crap. You're just like this person who ruffles feathers left and right. Some of the most powerful companies and people in the world. I'd just be curious, like, where does this come from? Where does this drive come from? I know you grew up in a very religious family. You just go up against everyone. Are you ever fazed?
Well, actually, maybe the point was that my family my both parents are a priest in the Danish church, but they were never that religious. What they were open for contradiction. And when I was very small, I read, and we only had a weekly paper. My dad was active in local politics, and there was a very, very angry piece in that paper saying that he was completely and everything was wrong and he should never and all of that. And I was devastated. And my dad, he was enthusiastic. This was exactly what he wanted to achieve, that someone contradicted him. So I have been taught that saying what you think, doing what you find to be the right thing, when people contradict you and disagree with you, that is not a mistake or an error or bad. This is the way the world is. So you should be able to stand there and do what you find to be the right thing.
Back in 2009, and man, was I an optimist, right? I remember covering companies when they were just coming up, and things got really complicated. And I think there's a lot of people are really wondering about this time. Are we going to come out of this? And is tech good or bad? And so I'd be curious, because I go back to what I said at the beginning of this conversation, which is what a fascinating time to sit in the seat that you sit in. Are you an optimist? Do you think we come out of this? Does big tech win back trust?
Well, yes, I am an optimist, but this is because I think that it's a moral obligation. Because pessimists, they really never get anything done. Because it's worse tomorrow, so why bother?
Thank you so much.
Well, it was a pleasure being here with you. Thank you
very much.